I don't know. I think that we do need to try to find a
We'll get
solution
there.
for it. I don't know what that is.
We'll get there. No.
I mean, it'd be helpful to move someplace that like.
One of them was really through
where
it.
you
Really
have
kind of threw
there
a
all the
kink in
time,
my stuff.
and you can kind of close off
Right.
that way.
All right, it is 6:30. We'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Eastward Alderman John Quinn.
Here.
Eastward Alderman J.C. Cunningham.
Here.
Mayor Natalie McNish.
Here.
Westward Alderman Robert Boggs.
Here.
Westward Alderman Stacy Lee. Here.
If you would please rise and have a moment of silent prayer or reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The minutes of our last regular scheduled meeting on April 29th are included in your board packet. Do we have any questions or corrections? If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next item in your packet are expenditures and financial reports. There are several pages worth of these. Are there any questions, first of all?
I didn't have any. There's
Okay.
also updated loose claims that have came in after the packet was put together.
So our approval will include those.
Yep.
One thing that you will notice within this is proposed audit journal entries. This is the independent external audit of the City of Marshfield. As they go through and do their audit work, they have certain entries that they both assist us with and find corrections that need to be made. So this is both sides of that story. Monica, was there anything significant
On the claims report or on the?
on the AJEs?
No. Some of the entries also include moving the money from Southern Bank to Seymour Bank. And so there's some entries in there. The system did not particularly care for that process. So we ended up having, using cashier checks and going from one bank to another. Our accounting system didn't like writing the checks. That's what we had started with.
Writing the checks to itself?
To itself, yes.
Yeah.
So through the process of going on the phone with them, working through correcting that, there's some correcting error entries on that. But then that should be between that and the audit entries, that should be most of them. And then the other ones are just the regular monthly ones.
Okay. Any idea of when Marshall is slated to present?
Next, the first June meeting.
Okay. Fantastic. If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. The next item in your packet is departmental reports. You have a couple that are in there. Again, this is an area that we are working on with individual departments to come up with some more informative reports. And I hope that you'll see this section change over time. We will work on that over the summer. However, a lot of those individuals are also working on our road products right now. And so just keep in mind, it may take us some time to get these underway. Are there any questions on the departmental reports? Okay, we will go on to committees, boards, commissions, and reports. So I'll start this off. Do we have Dwayne? We do not.
He's not on here.
Okay. Planning and zoning met just Tuesday. We approved a site plan for the new Wendy's, which will be built next to the Burger King. And then we approved a site plan for Hampton's Lawn and Garden, which is going to be constructed out at the old motel, Chinese barbecue, depends on how far back you want to go, right? And also we approved the sole applicant for the land use committee. We're still looking for one more applicant. So if you know of somebody on the West Ward, right? In the West Ward, if we know of somebody that you think is great for this job, ask them if they'd like to apply. We're still interested in filling that last seat. Anything else you'd add?
Just something coming up, just so you guys are informed, and that's a big reason I wanted to get that back on the agenda in front of you so that you heard it here and not that way you had all the information. But the Early Childhood Development Center for the school, they're going to be, we're working with them currently on, they're working on a site plan that'll be coming back to the next P&Z meeting. One thing a little bit different that you'll see about that one is that we didn't find anywhere for a conditional use permit for that on file. And so you'll see them go through that process. It's a little atypical, but in that R1 residential, it is under a CUP. And so you'll see that property posted. I've talked to Mike Henry over at the school, and you know, it's not going to cause him any timing delays. And he was actually happy with the process because it just brings a whole nother public aspect to it and a public notification aspect to it. And so just when you see those postings and you see that in the paper, you get asked about it. That's why you'll see it there. So.
Right. The other wonderful thing about the last meeting was that we got to see Scott Hansen. Scott is our engineer who has been unable to be with us over the last several months after a medical incident, and it was great to have him on the call. Oh, Richard. Okay. Parks and Rec, Mark?
Yes, just a quick update. We had record numbers in soccer and crazy spring weather this year. Most of the Saturdays, it was nice during the week. Most of the Saturdays were rainy or cold, or we had snow a couple of weeks before we started. But we closed the season on Sunday, and now that soccer's over, I can all but guarantee some nice weather on Saturday. So you can look forward to that. We're in the middle of baseball signups right now, softball, t-ball. Things of that nature. And we've already got more signed up than we had all of last summer. So that's a good thing. A lot of our attention is being directed toward the Dr. Tommy McDonald Aquatic Center and getting that up and running and ready to go. We've got signups for swim team, swim lessons, season passes, rentals. We're scheduling school groups. And one thing that the park board went through the park board, we're partnering with the Marshfield schools to do, they're doing some triathlon. We're kind of partnering with their summer school program. So Dr. Henry is, he's a triathlete. And so they are offering triathlon training, and they're going to do one for the summer school program. So we're partnering with them for use of the pool. We're going to tag along and see what they're doing and how they're doing it and things like that. And we hope to offer one to the public, a kids triathlon next year. So that's a neat partnership that we've got going on with them. And just getting chemicals balanced and the mechanicals all set and inventory and cleanup done. And I just left the lifeguard class. So we've got, 30 lifeguards out there in a lifeguard class that will be ready to go when we open a week from this Saturday on the 29th. And we're already looking forward to the middle of the summer, talking about the fair. Met with the fair board, and they've got some ideas about traffic flow for the fair and how to get people in and out and the ebb and flows easier, how to connect their parking lot down with our park there, and we work with them on some of those things. So looking forward to see how that works this summer too.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have updates from any other committee or board? Okay. As a general rule, some of these boards only start meeting June, July area. So it's typical that we would not have an update from them. I'd expect that cemetery will probably be in June because they have an annual meeting. July, August, I bet finance committee will start coming together. Land use, we're hoping to get that group together in June or July, whatever works with the schedules. Board of Adjustment still has some openings. We do have some that have committed to that board, but until we can get enough to actually have a quorum and actually make it function well, we're not going to appoint. So that will still be coming back. If you have suggestions for individuals who might like to serve on that, please reach out and let us know. All right, with that, we'll go on to unfinished business. I don't see Michael Taylor on the call. I do know that he provided a COVID update in the packet. Is there any questions on that report? I did do a little bit of research today, talking to Karen before the meeting, and wanted to find out about the state of emergency that is currently still open in our city. That was originally based off the state of emergency. So a little bit of research, I found that the governor has recently extended the state's civil emergency until August 31st. So we will continue to extend ours. Ours does not have a end date. We have to rescind that in ordinance. So we will keep an eye on that. But for now, that is all that is out there. The May 27th Board of Alderman meeting has been canceled. We need approval to stay current for routine expenditures. In order to do that, I need a vote. So I need a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to pay the expenditures.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right, on to new business. The first item on new business is the appointment of consent to and approval of new police officer per section 200.040 of the Marshfield Municipal Code. We hired new police officer Garrett Fannin. He started on Monday. Because of the canceling of the last meeting, we reached out to Paul to find out what we could do to still get him sworn in before he started on Monday, and then have the approval come in after the fact. Paul, would you explain how?
We basically, because he was already slated to start and we had the unforeseen situation with the propane tanks and the fire and stuff. So went ahead and got him approved to get started on Monday. This appointment and consent, you all had already approved getting the police officer, and then we'd already talked about the new officer Fannin. So this is more of a, I would say, ceremonial type vote that has to take place where you vote to approve Mr. Fannin as a new police officer, and then we'll be completely good to go moving forward.
All right,
I'd make that motion to approve him.
thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
All right.
All right. And with that, we have Mr. Robert Williams with us regarding the naming of the new road, which we currently call the North Elm Extension or the Elm Street Extension. And Mr. Williams?
Yeah,
Awesome.
yes.
We'll let you have the floor. So
You hear me? Fantastic, thank you. Hey, I'm going to share a PowerPoint just to kind of go along with what I'm saying. It's not going to have a whole lot of detail, but let me know if you don't mind if this doesn't work. I'll come away from it real quick, but.
It's
I
up.
think we see you.
Is it going?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad it's going for you because I can't see it. So, can you see that first screen there, Sam?
Yeah. For
Okay.
the agenda item.
There you go.
Yep.
It's going now. Thank you. Yeah. So sorry about that.
Hey, Robert, can you change that into?
Well, let me just say, I'm sorry, Sam.
There you go. There you go. Nothing.
Okay.
You got it.
Thank you for allowing me to address these following two agenda items, actually. in person, actually, I guess in virtually. Sam gave me the choice of being there in person though, and I appreciate that. I know how much directness and brevity are appreciated in these meetings, so I'm going to try to be both tonight. I do want to quickly say though, from me, thank you for selecting Sam Rose as our city administrator. He did not pay me to say that. But during my 6 years as mayor, Sam has always been a great leader. He served the city well for many years, and there's no doubt that he's going to continue to do so. I think it was a great decision. Regarding the next 2 agenda items, I always appreciate when, you know, as mayor, I always appreciate when people from the community brought requests and information to the board in a constructive effort to improve the city. And therefore, I try to stay engaged these days and offer things that might be helpful, but I have no expectation that you would give me a direct response. Rather, I hope it will, you know, initiate or inform continued open discussion. So this first request is for the board to approve an ordinance that designates the current drive and future road that will run adjacent to Patriot Park as Patriot Way. See if I can, as Patriot Way or something similar. You know, by standard logic, this future route is currently called the Elm Street extension. I believe it's even written on the agenda for this item that way. But in my opinion, it is justified to deviate from the standard naming protocol so that this new area of development, you know, that we have in Marshfield can continue to grow as a clear effort by the city to show appreciation for the selfless sacrifice of our past and present military and emergency service members. The theme of the new park and pool has already been designated for this cause, hence the name of the pool, Dr. Tommy McDonald Aquatic Center, and the name of the park, Patriot Park. And so consistent with that effort and the intended theme for this area of development, I request that you as our city leaders would take this action and blaze this trail. Now, currently, there are no addresses on this road, so naming it sooner rather than later makes sense, and it will avoid causing an address change for future residents or businesses. It would mean having a road named differently on one side of Hubble Drive than the other, which seems a little bit different, but that in itself, it's not all that uncommon. And that in itself gives pause to future generations to ask, you know, why does the road name change across after Hubble? And of course, the answer would be because the city wanted to do something obvious to communicate for generations the need to honor selfless sacrifice. In fact, that message can be written into the ordinance itself, and there can be a naming ceremony this coming September 11th in remembrance of the emergency service providers and subsequent military members who risked and lost their lives to protect the American people and the citizens of Marshfield. So the mayor and I in the past have expressed to each other a mutual desire to place monuments or old military surplus items in this area or along this path. Now, I've always wanted an old fighter jet, and she wants a tank. As an Air Force veteran, the reason for my choice is obvious. So setting aside the mayor's misguided priorities, why not try to get both? And, excuse me, as well as, you know, other monuments or naming different facilities or features after local heroes. You know, one option that came up with Patriot Park, for instance, was to name the trail in honor of Matt Blankenship, the firefighter that lost his life a number of years ago now. But all of that will be a future conversation. Patriot Way is a name that I personally vetted through several people. I mentioned several options and asked for ideas in case anybody wants to know why Patriot Way. This is the one that had broad support, and it's consistent with the name of the park. However, my request is more about the effort itself than the name. The board may feel there are better options, and that's fine. One other reason for making this change is actually on the wall as you leave the board chambers. On that wall is a plaque that identifies our city as a Purple Heart City. Now, I don't know of any signage in the city of Marshfield. Maybe Sam does, but I don't know of any signage in the city of Marshfield that promotes this honor. But I've traveled to several communities that do. And the only requirement for being a Purple Heart City is that we make some effort to honor those who served. I believe the action that I'm proposing will clearly justify our commission as a Purple Heart City, which could then be proudly displayed through signage on key routes, especially on this route that I'm talking about. Doing so will give future generations pause to ask, what does it mean to be a Purple Heart City? And the question alone is evidence of a mission accomplished, in my opinion. It communicates that at the highest level, the highest local level, Marshfield is a community that values patriotic service in all shapes and sizes. When you and I are no longer here, the road, the park, the signage, and future efforts in that area will remain. And when children see the intersection, they will either ask, why is it called Patriot Way on one side and Elm on the other? Or they will not. And silence is an opportunity lost. So thank you for hearing this request. I'm happy to address any questions you have on this first agenda item if there are any.
Thank you very much, Robert. At this time, we'll open the floor. Alderman Lee.
I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I'm not in favor of it. I can see making the road through the park Patriot Way or Patriot Parkway. But to me, it's Elm Street and it runs all the way to the new intersection.
Okay. Alderman Cunningham.
Agree with Ms. Lee. We just made an extension of a road. We didn't make a new road. I mean, it's just an extension of Elm to me. I don't know of any, there might be, but I don't know of any other in the town of Marshfield that's named too different. There is in the county, but I don't know of any in the city. I may be wrong though.
Okay. Alderman Boggs.
Well, I do greatly appreciate you bringing this to the forefront because I think it is important for us to think about a way to honor them. I don't know that this is the way that's best suited, but I think it's great to figure out something that would be a good way to honor them, even if this isn't.
Alderman Quinn.
Kind of in favor of the idea, and I think any opportunity we can honor our first responders and our military, I think we should do it.
Okay. Any open discussion?
I would throw out there, some other options. If that's not palatable to the board, then, we are going to have a trail that runs all the way down through there as well. And so, each trail's individuals have what we name it and how, we've got the Rotary Park Trail, we've got the Hidden Waters Trail, we've got this and that. So just something else for you to be thinking of as you move forward. And there's another avenue out there for pedestrian traffic that you could think of. And that trail is meant to connect all the way back into the school.
So are you talking about the existing trail that's already been constructed along the new corridor?
So whatever would be considered, right? I mean, there's supposed to be there. So in the bid documents, there will be a new trail running along the new extension.
Okay.
And it actually, the plans are, if the budget will allow, when the bids come back, that it'll be paved from all the way there from Rockwood Dental
Right.
to the new concrete trail there along the new CC corridor.
Okay. And then Mark, in the Patriot Park, I don't remember if we had a schematic in our master plan. Yes, we did. Is there a road that will go through there? I'm trying to remember what we agreed with when we.
There's a
when we-
conceptual,
Okay.
Yeah.
So our intention was to build a road from where our current entry is for the pool through the park and out where the new fire department will be constructed. Is that correct?
I don't remember where it exited. I'd have to revisit that. But there was a road in there that at least, I know there was a road in there because it led back to that proposed, that conceptual athletic complex back there. But I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
I'll look.
Okay. So is this something that we would like to have some other ideas brought back to the board to discuss?
I would at least like to see the drawings of like how Patriot Park and how that road and the sidewalks are going to tie together, so we could maybe even see.
So some of that is not in that. So when we did the Parks Master Plan, that group put together some idea drawings, not even to scale, right? But idea drawings. And that's what we have. We are currently in the process, Mark, you can help me with this, on doing the schematic plan for that, which will actually get into the nitty gritty of things like where does a trail go? Where does a road go? Where does a sidewalk go? Where do the memorials, where does his airplane go and where is my tank?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll get into all that.
Is the idea of that extension going to be a thoroughfare for traffic, or is this going to have speed bumps and just be for access to the park?
The one in the park
Or-
would just be in the park.
I think it's a thoroughfare though, from Hubble to the new extension or to the new CC.
Yeah.
That would be a main corridor as far as
I
like
think, I
the,
think it will be a thoroughfare. I don't think it'll be an arterial right now,
Right.
but it
Yep.
will be a thoroughfare for sure. It'll be busy. Yep, it will be.
There is a road and it connects some parking lots and goes through there.
Connect CC to the Elm Street extension.
It
Depends
does.
on how the fire department places their,
It does.
Their structure, yeah.
yeah.
Right, if I remember right, when we did that, that plot for them, we specifically left frontage for us
We
to
did.
have an access point.
Yep, we sure did.
and like Robert said, though, it is a good that there's no houses on there yet. So we
Yeah.
do have a little bit of time if we were going to do that. So in my mind, we still have a little bit of time to,
The pool is addressed on Elm Street.
oh, is it? Okay.
1490, I think.
The pool can change.
Right.
Yeah, it's just one.
We're good with the pool change.
But we could at least have a little bit of time to think about it and see what other
Okay.
options we might have for that.
Okay, so we will pass this back to staff to come up with additional options and leave the Elm Street extension on the list at the time, but that way we can continue talking about the topic. Does that sound okay?
I mean, I've heard of roads being, actually this road, but being named honorarily Patriot Way. Or,
Yeah.
you know, so maybe that's something we could do.
And we can look at what that process is. Yeah, because I know when I go down to Branson, when you used to have the old Garmin, and it would come up with about 14 different names that the
Right.
same road was called. Yeah, I do remember that. So there's got to be a process that goes in with that. Okay. So with that, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is also Mr. Williams on the four-way stop request for Hubble Drive at Elm and Pine.
Okay. Well, thank you again. The second item, really, it's just purely out of concern for safety. I'm confident that the board would eventually consider these actions, whether they do them or not, as they move forward, you know, on what I've proposed as Patriot Way or Elm Street Extension, however that ends up. But I'm mentioning them in the hope that they're going to be kind of bumped up on the priority list As you all already know, so really I just mentioned it for public knowledge, that as a condition to move forward on the new interchange, the state had to redirect CC Highway. And in doing so, they vacated, excuse me, or will vacate. I'm not sure if they've done it yet or not. The previous CC, known also as Hubble Drive. And now the city is going to take over responsibility for maintenance and safety management on Hubble from Spur Drive to Rifle Range Road, or in that area. So in my opinion, this change marks the time to move forward with 3 changes to this route. The 2 changes specified on the agenda deal with 2 intersections, which I'll explain. But first, there's a 3rd change that is needed to support those 2, or with or without those 2, and improve overall safety on Hubble Drive. I request that the board would lower the speed limit on Hubble Drive to 35 miles per hour. The city of Marshfield actually has established 35 miles per hour as its top speed limit in residential and well-traveled areas. In fact, there are only 2 roads in Marshfield that are 40 miles per hour, and that is from Lund Boulevard to the city limits on 00. So it's the very last piece going out of town. And it's also Old North Buffalo Road, which is not traveled and kind of out of the picture. And there's actually only 3 roads that are 45 miles per hour. There's the final stretch of Commercial Street from Walnut to the city limits, which again is just the last little bit going out of the town. And then there's the final stretch of Golf Course Road after you pass all of the new development, and it goes on out to the city limits. So again, it's just that last stretch. The only other road that has a 45 mile per hour speed limit is Hubble Drive, and it's the entire length of the road. Even though it runs adjacent to 3 city parks and has multiple residential ingress and egress points. In fact, there are over 55 points along that route, not counting the new roundabout. In comparison, the 35 mile per hour portion of Golf Course Road has fewer ingress and egress points, even after accounting for the difference in length. And while there is a privately owned golf course, there are no city parks along Golf Course Road. The driveways alone along Hubble are enough to raise an eyebrow, but additionally, there are 4 vulnerable spots along that route that I would like to mention. It used to be 5 before the new roundabout was built. One is Marshall Street, and that area of Marshall Street, because that's the location of the fairgrounds. And anybody who has driven through there during a busy event can attest to the traffic safety issues, from increased traffic to parking along the non-existent shoulder on Hubble Drive. And now that we've put in a new interchange down Marshall Road, North Marshall Road, we've added more hourly traffic at that intersection because of the interchange. Another danger area is just down from there, where Hubble runs along North Park, and again, the 4 spots where Hubble runs along North Park. The existence of a picnic park, which is what North Park is considered, along a busy road has always presented a risk. And you'll notice on the picture, the 3 picnic tables that sit right along the roadside. The risk was clearly identified a few years back when a young man lost control of his vehicle and drove off of the road, coming to a stop only after he demolished one of those concrete picnic tables. And as mayor at the time, I requested the table not to be replaced, which is the reason for the empty pad that currently sits in North Park. And in hindsight, I should have requested the removal of all tables by the board along that roadside. It doesn't take much to imagine the outcome had there been a family or a child sitting at the table at that time. Next is the intersection of Pine and Hubble. That intersection has long been considered by the community to be dangerous. The lack of visibility due to the hill and the curve and the 45-mile-per-hour speed limit make it a scary turn when getting on or off Hubble. And I appreciate John had actually provided me with a couple pictures, but I don't have them on here. But we've all seen this intersection, and we've probably all made the same comments about how frustrating it is to try to turn at that intersection. There's nothing practical that can be done about that hill or the curve, but this board has complete authority over the speed limit on Hubble Drive and whether or not there is a four-way stop with signage, which is I'm recommending, in addition to changing the speed limit, is that we would install with signage, not lights, a four-way stop at that intersection. Finally, the intersection at Elm and Hubble has a little better visibility, but the new Dr. Tommy McDonald Aquatic Center, the future activity complex, and Patriot Park, along with what will be increased traffic when Elm Street Extension or Patriot Way is finished, it elevates that to a dangerous intersection, not so much because of vehicle traffic, but because of the pedestrian traffic. What did not exist there prior to the new pool is children riding bicycles, walking, or skateboarding across that intersection. And I've driven down the lane going to the pool several times and found children walking or riding their bikes or skateboarding, and the only way they could have gotten there is to have crossed what was CC Highway. Children are crossing there right now, and that's the reason for making it a four-way as soon as the city takes ownership of that road, in my opinion. The city built the pool in that location for good reason. And however, changing this to a four-way stop was always the intention of the board during those discussions. I don't think the four-way ended up in the design necessarily, because we were just talking about signage on both intersections as opposed to traffic lights. However, the board did make it clear with Mike Beatty from Great Rivers that they planned on making it a four-way stop. And once the city has ownership of Hubble, it has the responsibility to protect the children that are attracted there by the new park and pool, in my opinion. It's my hope that you as our city leaders feel the same. Again, what makes it possible today that made it impractical prior to today is that the city will now have ownership of that road. Prior to this, and when that road was installed long ago, that road was just like other roads. It was a road coming in and out of the city, but it wasn't, not much of it was in that city, but the development of Briarwood, the development down around the golf course, all of the new development to the east and the north has now made it, if you look at a map, has made that road actually very much inside the city, like any other residential road. And so it should have the speed limit adjusted and have the same traffic safety features as we would any other road in the city of Marshfield. Thank you for hearing me out on these issues. And again, I'm happy to address any questions if you have any.
Thank you so much, Robert. I do know that staff have done some work on this, so I'm going to let them present next. Sam?
Yeah, so knowing that this was going to be on the agenda, I asked Mel Akins with Great River Engineering to join us tonight. And so we did, Robert's correct, we that was heavily discussed back in the design portion of this, and keeping in mind that, you know, we were, some of this was conceptual at the time, some of it was with the hope that we could get it to go through, not knowing where we were at exactly with the interchange. And so there are actually some standards that go into a four-way stop. It's not something we can just go out there and just stick the signs in and now it's a four-way stop. I mean, there's some involvement in that, and then there's some criteria from the engineering side of it. And so that's why I asked Mel to talk to you guys a little bit about doing basically a warrant study, if you guys choose to go forward with any location, right? Then there are certain criteria that they would have to meet before they would either be deemed that would be necessary for a four-way, or why they wouldn't be. So Mel, did that pretty well sum up the summary of that? And are you able to talk to that?
Yeah, I can. Hey, so can I share my screen?
Yep.
Sam?
Yep. Be able to.
And so this is a presentation that I gave to the board back, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. It was before we designed the Elm Street from Hubble to the new Patriot Park. And so I'm just going to kind of show you some slides within this for discussion purposes. But back when we did this, can you guys see that?
Yeah. Hey, Mel, there's a drop down or something. There's a slide layout on the right side of your screen. I don't know.
Okay.
If you can get rid of that.
Apologize. Is that working for you?
No, it didn't take it off. I've never actually seen that.
What if he clicks on play?
There you go. That's it. There you go.
Okay. And so so I'm just going to kind of breeze through these, but you can see at the time we hadn't designed CC yet, or sorry, we hadn't designed Elm Street yet north of CC. And we did discuss at that time Pine and Hubble, and we were looking at, what do we want to do here? And so at that time we were looking at, do we want to do any intersections at CC and Elm? We were going to extend Elm Street north for what was that back then called the Activity Center. We didn't even know it was going to be called Patriot Park back then. And there was a thought that we would possibly extend it future to Marshall Road and the interchange, but we really didn't know because we didn't know what the funds were going to be and how the bids were going to come in. And we talked about some improvements on Elm Street south of CC. And then there was a residential driveway where John used to live, and some other issues like that pond and that type of thing. So that's how far this goes back. And then you can kind of see at that point there was that concept for Patriot Park there, and then that road that was discussed going through the park is shown on there. It's kind of hard to see, but it's actually on there. And we kind of discussed the road layout, how it exists now, and then how development might occur. So these different colors are the different types of development. We showed how the Elm extension could go up and serve the park. And then we showed how ultimately that could all be constructed with the interchange and Marshall and that type of thing. And so that was kind of the discussions. So now I'm going to kind of go down. And so back then we looked at different traffic volumes at these various interchanges. And it was based off of, most of the data was based off the CMT study that they did for the interchange. And so back then we didn't know whether we were going to build the whole project or just portions of the project. So you'll see on the bottom left there that was back in, we had counts from 2017. And then we were like, okay, well, what would our design year was 2040. What would the projections be in 2040 if we didn't build the interchange? What would they be if we built sections 2 through 5? And then what would be the projections if we built everything 1 through 6, which is ultimately what we did. And so we talked about at this intersection of Elm and CC or Hubble, what happens if we do nothing? Do we need to add lanes? Do we need to add a signal? There was even a discussion of a roundabout there. And so this is, I think, the thing that Robert was talking about earlier. If you look, I wish I could, this doesn't let me put my mouse on it, but Do you see the column that says 2040 volumes, section 1 through 6? It's kind of the middle column with all the yeses and the nos. And then if you go down just a little bit below halfway, there's a level of service with a two-way stop sign control. And it shows the eastbound approach under that scenario. It has a level of service A. The westbound approach has a level of service A as well. So that means that, if you built everything that you ultimately ended up building all of the interchange project, that traffic going eastbound and westbound on CC or Hubble would have a level of service A, the highest level of service. And then the traffic on northbound and southbound Elm Street would have a level of service C. And so that's based off of CMT's numbers. They're not actual, they're estimates, but that would indicate that it probably likely would not warrant a traffic or a four-way stop based off of traffic flow. Now, what Robert said is very true. There's other reasons you could warrant something like that, but it probably wouldn't be based off of traffic. It would you'd probably have to justify it based off of pedestrian traffic or some other thing. If you're going to put one in based off traffic, the way that you would do that is what's called a warrant analysis. And we would actually go out there and study the actual traffic at that intersection. And then there's standards that we use to justify whether we put in a four-way stop or not. And so we would have to go out there and do actual counts and then use our manual to see whether or not that would be justified. And so what will happen is that if you don't go through a process or justify it, and then there's an accident or something like that in the future, then it comes up in court. They can say, okay, did you go through the proper processes for that sign? And did the addition of that sign have any impact on an accident, that type of thing? So if you're going to put in a four-way stop, I would generally recommend that you go through. So we could do that if you want. The problem is that you really can't study it right now because the road doesn't exist. And also school's not going on. So that impact of how school, when does school get out? Is it already out?
Tuesday.
Yeah, so we probably would never get the impact of how that affects the morning or evening peaks. So we'd almost, if we're going to do it, need to wait till one, the road's either built, and or two, school is back in session. So it'd probably be an August, September thing that we would want to do. And by that time, we probably have got the new road paved. And so that would be the time to do it if we're going to base it off of traffic. If we're going to base it off of pedestrians, that's a different approach. And I think that's what Robert is suggesting.
It sounds like a pedestrian approach at Elm, and definitely where we have new infrastructure and new improvements, I could see it warranting that. Pine's the same as it's always been. So that's the one you're saying we don't have a existing warrant study on and would need to do a new warrant study?
I think you'd really need to do them at both of them, but I don't think that I think what Mel's saying is you can't do one at Elm Street right now because you don't have the through
Because we don't
traffic
have Elm.
coming, right?
Okay.
And so I don't think you could do a true warrant study on that section. Hey, Mel, do you have? Can you go on down in that presentation just for the board to see too? One of the things that we were looking at, go on down that shows that alternative alignment. One of the things at the time that we were looking at, see, there's the possible roundabout, but we were talking about really squaring this intersection up. It comes through there at a skew right now, and so it did. So does Pine Street as well.
Yeah, I don't think this particular presentation had that in it, but you're right. We did look at squaring up that intersection.
So that they could come in at a true T.
90.
Yeah, at a 90. And so what that got into a lot of real estate and a green and tee box at the golf course. It got into the time frame for getting the pool constructed and getting Elm Street done. And so the option that we have now was the one that was selected. And so, obviously a true four-way stop would be much more preferred on a straight 90. But it's something that we can absolutely look into if that's the direction the board wants to go.
Well, and just to clarify, I mean, I don't think that we made the decision ever to what improvements that we were going to make at this stage of the game back then. Because when we designed the road from CC to the aquatic center, we didn't know what you were going to do with the interchange. And so I think the way it was left is, hey, we're going to design it and get the pool open. And then when we figure out what we're going to do with the interchange and what we're going to build and we're not going to build, if that results in having to do intersection improvements, that would be something we'd come back and do in the future.
Am I correct? We do not currently own Hubble.
We do
CC?
not. No, we do not. I mean, once we sign that jurisdiction was transferred, then we could consider the speed limit change. We could really consider this stuff. I mean, not saying we can't gear up for it, but you couldn't take any action on it right now, even if you wanted to.
Okay.
Official action. Yeah.
And so I'll open this up for the board to have open discussion as well. Did we ever do anything similar to this at Elm and Marshall? Since Marshall is looped into that interchange?
No. I mean, there was some, I say no, CMT had done some traffic studies and traffic analysis, but we never did a warrant study. For
A
it,
warrant
so.
study, okay. All right, then we'll open the floor. Alderman Cunningham?
Well, I agree there's something needs to be done with all three of those intersections. Starting with Marshall, I mean, now that you got more traffic going through there, you got someone coming, say, south on Marshall, and you're wanting to turn off the CC, go north, you almost have to wait for them to get turned. You know, I mean, it's just so narrow. Elm Street needs something for safety wise with kids, really do. And Pine Street, I grew up in that area. It would really help if we had lines painted on the road. Everybody pulls into the other lane. I deal with it every morning. I have to go around somebody in my lane. So I think it'd really help if we maybe get MoDOT to paint them lines before it would really help a lot. But yeah, we need something at all three of those. And even down at, I think it's Jefferson, on down around. Them lines need to be painted too. Some people just don't know where the lines are. It would help traffic flow.
But they won't paint them. We will. We squeezed every ounce of favor that we could out of that deal, but we can once we take.
Yeah.
Yep.
That one's
Hey,
done.
Mayor,
I
can
go
I
around.
just mention something very quickly in relation to what JC, I believe it was, just said? Between the roundabout and Price Cutter, I did a count, and there's like 25 ingress egress points along that route alone. And the speed limit running through there is 45 miles per hour.
Okay.
Just like it is the rest of Hubble.
Alderman Boggs?
Yeah, those exit points are terrible for kids getting out of school. I mean, parents, it's a nightmare. So as much as I hate to really think about having a four-way stop sign, it would, if I had to go that way, it would definitely be a lifesaver.
Okay. Alderman Quinn?
Well, the warrant analysis is for traffic. How do we study pedestrian traffic, like for the Elm Street? What is that process?
Sam?
Did you hear that, Mel?
He's muted, just a minute.
On Pine Street, that is a terrible intersection.
Yeah.
It's blind. You're going, yeah. So, yeah, I would think we need to do something on that.
Did you hear Alderman Quinn's question?
Yes, I did. And so, yes, the warrant study, as far as the traffic, is just based off traffic. When there's other things like known safety issues, line of sight, pedestrians, that type of thing, then there's a little bit more flexibility in making those decisions.
So Mel, you said something about liability if we did this without a warrant study based on traffic. So if we did it based on pedestrians, is there that same liability if there's an accident later on?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I think you can, the point is that you can document your reasoning for it and you have a rationale for it. So you're not just making a decision based off, I feel this. You could go out there and then document that.
Right, so the study would be good though.
It
Yeah.
would, and especially with, I think with all the improvements that we make there at Elm.
Right.
That based on what we've heard today, that's just an obvious. We have changed the landscape. We've changed the traffic.
Right.
By what we've done. So we need to improve it. I think the other two where Pine, we technically haven't done anything to, so I could see needing a study there. But to me, we have changed the landscape of Marshall by building that infrastructure and allowing the quick turn, the bypass around the roundabout to immediately take you to Marshall.
So we're in the recommended improvements that we're doing. There is a little bit of money set aside to widen Marshall Street, just so you guys know. So on each side, and so put radiuses in there and take care of some drainage issues there. So that is something that we're looking at internally. In fact, we've been out there this week looking at that. And so the only other thing I would say is that I agree with looking into it. And I agree that with those being on a skew, that it really makes a challenge. But I'll also say that is one of our arterial streets going through. And so if you were to put a four-way stop at every intersection, it's no longer an arterial street. You're asking residential traffic to stop along an arterial street that is used for other things. And it will be a bypass if there's an accident here or there. Just something else to consider.
I was thinking about that, but I was worried.
You're okay?
I was worried if we did one that, like, say you did one at Pine, because in my mind, Pine or Marshall, I think maybe Pine is even worse. But if you did one, you might play heck ever getting out of Marshall, because it would just space people just close enough to where you would never. That would be my concern about doing
That's valid.
picking one and not.
So I would recommend that if at some point tonight or anytime in the future, if you decide or vote to do a warrant analysis, I would throw in some money on that for conceptual design as well, because you need to know what that would look like. Probably far enough through that conceptual design to get some cost estimates, because you're probably going to have to do something, because those are especially Pine Street on the south side is very wide. There's no way you're going to be able to control a four-way stop in what could be 6 lanes of traffic at the head of it. And so there's going to have to be some work done there in order to even make that feasible. So.
Alderman Lee.
I'd agree with what Robbie said and what Sam said. I think we need to back up and look at the whole picture and probably wait until Elm is finished, school's back in session, before we just start making knee-jerk decisions. Yeah, something needs to be done.
Okay.
On that pedestrian study, how do we go about finding out how to get that accomplished? Because I frequent the golf course every once in a while. And I mean, just in last year, there's a lot more kids going up Elm Street, that whole stretch.
So my understanding is we do not have to have a pedestrian study. Is that accurate? But we would still want the warrant study for the traffic.
Yeah, I mean,
Is there,
I'll really kind of relay that on to Mel, just because they do that. But I mean, I don't think you have to do the pedestrian, but I think that I don't know what all goes into that, but I don't know how you would measure the pedestrian impact. Mel, what do you guys see there?
Well, I don't know what is there any crosswalks or sidewalks there now? I can't remember specifically when you're talking about Pine. There's nothing there right now, is there?
Correct.
No.
Yeah. So honestly, I'd have to think about that, because usually we'd look at it and say, okay, there's sidewalks there and there's a crosswalk there, and it's not sufficient to make a safe crossing. So I think generally what you would start with is, hey, let's put a pedestrian crosswalk there, that type of thing, and then elevate up from that. Not necessarily stop all the traffic on an arterial. But honestly, if you're going to make the type of changes you guys are talking about, putting several four-way stops through there, you're going to completely change the use and character of that road. And I probably would want to sit there and do a study, both traffic and pedestrian, look at the the routes, the pedestrian routes, and look at what kind of pedestrian volume, what's the neighborhood, how many people are going to be using that. And then also while you're at it, look at the traffic and kind of make some recommendation, because it will be a big difference if you put 3 or 4 four-way stops on Hubble there. It's going to completely change the traffic going through that pattern. So just to do that without some serious thought to it would be.
Wonder if a
Hey.
pedestrian bridge might be, I don't know, I mean, but across Elm,
A bridge?
yes, a pedestrian bridge kind of.
Mel, do you have any knowledge on pedestrian bridges?
Yeah, we've done a lot of them. That's a lot of money. I mean, it could certainly be done, but you could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars getting a pedestrian bridge across there.
Mel, are you aware of the pedestrian crossing that was placed in North Glenstone a couple of years back, right around the Oasis?
Not familiar with that specific one. We did the one on Kearney Street over there, kind of near PFI, the Mustang crossing.
So you walk up to it and you push a button. It's between lights. So you walk up and push a button and it signals to traffic that there is a pedestrian.
Oh yeah, that's a hawk. We did the one on Sunset like that.
Okay. What type of costs are likely associated with a project like that?
I don't remember what that one cost. I can get you that number, but I don't know off the top of my head. But we've designed them in the past, so I could get you what those cost.
Okay. So it sounds like we have a lot of different options, and maybe we need to know what all those options are.
Why is a signal light not an option? Or is it?
Very
Because
expensive.
you look at a four-way stop, it's still hard for pedestrians to get through on the four-way stop.
Mhm.
Traffic light, at least the traffic is stopped.
Sam?
So we could absolutely look at that, and we could put that in the scope of what we could look at, right? They are very expensive to install. They're very expensive to maintain, and that would be that would be the first ones or the only ones that the city would own, if that makes sense. I mean, all the rest of them are MoDOT owned, but that's absolutely something. If that's the direction the board wants to go, we could look at that.
But that, I think, if I understand what the mayor was saying, the intersection that I'm thinking of is called a Hawk intersection, and it's essentially a traffic light in the middle of a road specifically for pedestrians. It's to shut down traffic while pedestrians are crossing. Is that what you're talking about, Mayor?
Yes, it is.
So, I mean, that is a traffic light. It's just a much simpler, much less expensive one, and it doesn't affect traffic except when there's pedestrians wanting to cross there. So if we could find a good logical spot for that, then that would probably be a less expensive, less impactful on traffic option.
Challenging thing is that there's not a dedicated pedestrian trail until you get
Right.
all the way back over to until you get there on Locust in front of the school. I mean, that is.
But you're getting, the plans are.
No, I know. I don't disagree at all. I don't disagree at all.
They have, I mean, what you're talking about, they have it Rowlett, S&T, they have them all over
Yeah.
the place. I mean, I think everybody's pretty familiar with those lights are flashing. I mean, it's like a school bus stop sign. You hit somebody and you're, I mean,
Right.
they just hit the button and walk out there.
Okay, so it sounds like we would like staff to bring back proposals to have Mel and his group look at warrant studies, analysis, design, and a myriad of options that we might have available for pedestrian and traffic control in those 3 areas.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
I mean, I think you're talking about looking at that entire corridor, aren't you? There from Elm Street, basically to the new roundabout.
Right, or do we want to extend that on up to Price Cutter and do the entire Hubble stretch?
So I mean, let me ask Mel, and I think consensus can probably work here. But Mel, can we work together and put a scope of services back to the board to review with options of what to choose from, and
Sure.
then we can bring back and give that presentation based upon that scope, and then they'll have a menu of services they can choose from.
Yeah, I think that probably that's a good idea. Rather than go crazy and design a super comprehensive study, maybe you and I could talk about it, brainstorm some options, and then maybe we could have, maybe it's a tiny study where we just kind of put some information together so we can have a good discussion. Maybe we can have a work session or two with the board and staff. And then if something comes out of that where we want to do something more detailed or more expensive, we can do that. But don't spend a ton of money before we really
Correct.
get some good ideas down on
Rather put the
paper.
money in infrastructure. Thank you, Mel.
Hey, Mayor, as my last thing, can I just ask a question? I hadn't heard Mel or anybody say anything about it yet, but is there a study or what's required if the board were to decide to reduce the speed limit? Not that they want to, but just asking what the study we've talked about is for the intersection, the four ways, but what about the speed limit?
I can address that a little bit. Generally, if you have a road and you want to set the speed limit on it, generally the way they do it is what's called a speed study. And so you study the actual speed that cars travel down that road, and then the accepted safe speed for that is the 85th percentile of what people actually travel. That's what you would consider. Anything at that level or below would be considered a safe speed. And so I don't know what it is. I think people would drive pretty fast on that. So it probably would be pretty high. But then on top of that, that's the upper limit, a safe limit. Then you would go and look at how many driveways you got, what intersections you got, or what the sight distance of those. And then you would start at that, and then you would work your way down to a safe level from there. And that would all be part of your speed study.
Thank you, Mel. All right, so we have consensus on working with Mel to come up with a menu of options that we can kind of pick and choose from, build what it is we're looking for. Okay, it does appear we have that. Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. We appreciate your time and your input today.
Thank you.
With that, we will move on to the SCADA network improvements and change orders. And we have Richard.
Yeah, so I'm gonna let Richard kind of kick this off. As far as I know, we did our tour. Down at the treatment plant. And so I'm gonna let Richard tell you a little bit about what we're requesting tonight. And then when he's done, I'll take over and we'll talk about the financial portion of that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, so let me pull this up to make sure I'm on the same page.
So this is
Okay, so if you guys remember, when we had the walkthrough down at the plant, the main control building is on this change order for 24, a little over 24. So it was down there in between the clarifiers and the reactors, and it is of all the buildings down there, aside from the headworks, it's probably one of the most important buildings. And so there was a lot going on in there, obviously. And through this change order though, I don't remember if you remember or not, but the DO on those reactors is regulated. The guys usually manually set those. And so then part of this change order is to automate that and essentially give it a number, and it will virtually run itself on keeping the DO where they want it. And then also in the other half of that building where those return pumps were, they're constantly plugging up with rags. And so the guys flush them out every day. And if it happens in the night, there's no way to swap one of them over. And so with this change order, it would give off an alarm if one wasn't pushing as much as it was supposed to, and then they would be able to get on there and automatically switch those over and then fix whatever went wrong the next morning. And do you have any questions on that portion of it, of the building? So if not, then on those, on the sludge blanket monitor, so those, in those clarifiers where those louvers were, the guys go and manually drop a probe down in there every day. And so we would really like to be able, the trouble with it is that once again, kind of in the night or on the weekend, unless somebody's there to manually check those, you don't know what the level is. And so with that, if it runs over, then it goes straight into those sand filters and it is a nightmare to clean up. And so with this monitor, it would directly be hooked in, and it has to go actually into that control building too, but it directly hooked into SCADA, and we could set parameters on there and it give us an alarm, and at least you could see what was going wrong before it went wrong. You could be a little more proactive on that portion and be able to adjust the pumps inside the control building to accommodate that and save tons of headache on cleanup.
Any questions about why we're requesting it? Okay, in the front of your packet on one of these awesome spreadsheets and one of these sheets that Monica provides for you, it's actually the sheet after your second memo, after your second claims memo. It's a water and sewer system improvements sheet. So what that's tracking our projects from our SRF loan to our 2020 water and sewer revenue bond projects. And so
Natalie, go the other way.
I'll catch you.
okay, so on that sheet, no, you're just fine. On that sheet, you'll find the contract amount, and then you'll find everything that we've done through just through those projects, through the change orders, and where we're currently at. And then at the bottom, you'll find the balance. You'll find the balance of that. And so we've got a little over $608,000 left out of the 2020 water and sewer revenue bond project fund. And so these funds would kind of this 36,433 would actually come off of that balance of the 608. The 4,200 you'll see up there just a little bit above that. There's an alarms and communication work order for SCADA. That's a work order that I've recently signed to get this communication up. That was the last missing piece of this to get the communications up for Richard and them to get their alarms. This would finish. This would be the next big step to get the SCADA project finished. This is the fund that we're actually paying for the rest of the SCADA project out of. It was originally like a $730,000 project. So it's uniform with what we've been using the money for, and there's sufficient funds there to do so.
Open the floor. Alderman Boggs. Do you have any questions?
I do.
Alderman Quinn.
Well, by doing this, we could possibly be saving money
Yes.
by avoiding problems in the.
Alderman Lee. Alderman Cunningham.
Good. And again, the previous board had given the authority to sign change orders, keep things on a workflow up to $15,000. This one obviously exceeds my authority, and so that's why it's before you all.
My only question is, and I'm trying to remember where it was within the budget. Did we just go ahead and budget the rest of that 608 out in that particular fund? Or is this the money that they have and we didn't include in a budget because it's not a budgetary fund?
We have these funds.
Okay.
And we have not budgeted that 608.
Okay.
It is sitting there for our future projects for whatever, and we choose on the expansion project.
And so there wasn't the necessary contingency overall that there was for the other projects. So this portion was some contingency. Now you'll see contingency in there for a couple different projects, but this was kind of a contingency fund. Along with we didn't max that out. This was the remaining funds after the 6 million for the SRF. And so these are the funds that I've been talking to you guys about that, hey, you know, I was really hopeful up until we kind of figured out where we were at with this bypass plan, that maybe we could use these to extend these services out to the new area. However, these are going to be for these type of improvements, and we may be talking about doing I&I work with that, or this is what I was really hoping. Once we got this new system up and going, what I was really hoping was to be able to come back and ask you guys to approve some money to take that lift station 6 offline. I don't think that's where we're going to be. I think we're going to be spending that money getting back within regulation.
So this money is included in the wastewater treatment plant CIP fund? Is that correct? Is that where this, so
No.
where is this money?
Are you looking for the budget?
I'm looking in the budget.
The budget would be under your bonds. Under the bonds. No, that's your debt service. Yes, okay, it's under the wastewater, on the backside of the wastewater CIP. It's the
Okay.
water and sewer capital project fund.
So with this, we budgeted 400,000 in expenditures for this year, correct? So with this, do we risk going over that and need an amendment for this fund?
No, are you on the water and sewer capital project fund?
I'm in the water.
It's on the back of that.
It's on
the back of the CIP.
On the CIP page.
Okay. So we have 3.3 in expenditures, correct?
No,
No, that was on 1.4 for this year.
correct.
Okay. So with this additional expense, do we risk going over on this particular fund?
At the moment, no.
Okay.
We have $89,000 sitting there for the bypass elimination contingency. We
Okay,
have utilized some of those funds, but not that much. And then we also have the north side water expansion contingency of 62,000, and we have not utilized those as well.
okay,
And we also have the 40,000 that you see there for lift station 6. Obviously, with where we are with capacity, that's probably not going to rise to the top right now. So I don't think we'll be looking at spending that this year.
okay. So with the approval of this change order, there is no budgetary impact. So with that, I'll take a motion for approval.
I make a motion to approve the change order.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
All right.
All right,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Richard, are you gonna bow out, or are you gonna stay on for the next discussion?
No, I'll stay on.
All right, so our next agenda item is the leaf dump, compost site and services. And this was the item that I sent you all an email and asked you if you had time, please go by Elsa Jackson and park along the backside of that and take a look at the landscape that is that back hillside. This is a particular item that before I was mayor and served on the park board, we must have discussed this 4 or 5 different times. Various different reasons the subject matter would come up. It was always okay, why is this in the middle of the park? Well, there used to be a ravine there. They were allowing leaves and grass clippings to be dumped there, but no matter how many times we publicized that, it was never just leaves and grass clippings. So this is what we've done is we've asked the park board, okay, is this something you want to continue happening on your particular property? And their answer was no. And so what that allows me to do is elevate that to your level so that we can get some additional discussion additional ideas. And when I say this is a longstanding thing, when I joined the team with the parks, this had been a longstanding discussion. So this has been going on for quite some time. It's not past me to understand that this is a service that our citizens rely on at this point. Those who know it's there, they rely on it. It's also a service that has been abused. It's not for limbs. I'm sure all of you found limbs when you were out there. It's not for trash, but we do end up with trash out there. My favorite was the carpet. It's something that if it's a service we want to provide, we need to do a better job of providing it than what we're doing now. It's not controlled. It's literally just filling a portion of our parks. And that particular parkland has a future use, and it's not a landfill. Landfill is not part of the park's master plan. So how do we get the park back to the park and still figure out if or how we can provide the service? And that's kind of where we're at. So having the parks make this recommendation puts it to this level where we can get more ideas and more input and see what we can do to move this issue forward in the correct way. One thing that has been brought up to me is refuge service, our trash service. So this is a 2-year process that we are about 1 year in the middle of. Okay. We have to follow state law, which says we had to send out a letter to everyone who collects trash in our city that says, hey, in 2 years, we might look at doing something different. But then we have to give them those 2 years before we actually do something. Now, that does mean within the next 6 months to 9 months, I hope to be bringing things back to you to where we can discuss whether the city wants to take over that particular service, not as in the city is going to have a trash service, as in the city might contract it out. But at that time, that would open up possibilities for recycling. That would open up possibilities for green waste. However, we're still a minimum of 1 year out. At this time, the current site it's not mounded over, and thank heavens for that, but it is full. And besides being full, we do spend a lot of man hours out there cleaning it up, especially here in the next month, because we have to get that ready for the 4th of July fireworks, which are shot off on that back hillside. And with the condition that it is now, we couldn't allow that to happen. So I'll pass it off to staff, but that's kind of like my background in this and why we have asked this to come up the chain the way we have. Because it's not a parks issue. It's bigger than a parks issue. I can't ask the parks board to decide whether or not the city continues to provide a service. That's our choice. So I needed them to pass along the recommendation to get the conversation started. Sam?
So I'll show my age just a little bit here. So some of you may or may not remember, but this site over here behind City Hall, from our maintenance building over to Elizabeth Street, used to be a limb dump. And it was, so when it started, they used to burn. When I came on staff, they had just came through a big deal with DNR and said, can no longer burn. That's when we bought our first chipper. We would go out there and it was no doubt, no joke, from the building to Elizabeth all the way over here to the ball field. That parking lot wasn't there now. That's there now. It was all brush. We would go out there and chip all day for it may be a month, it may be 3 months, and you might get from here to the other side of the parking lot before that area filled back up. So it was just a disaster. And so, and it was just a nightmare, and it was just man hours doing the same thing over and over and over. So from there, we went away from that service and we started doing limb pickup at the curb. So now, and we still continue to do that since COVID, everything since COVID, right? But since COVID, we have not been able to do so in the same manner that we were because we were so heavily dependent on the inmate program. So right now, just so you know, even with or without an inmate program, we shut down, or it takes us minimum of 10 to 12 days to do a cycle through town to pick up limbs. That being said, it is a 3 to 4 guy job of full-time staff. So that's why the inmate program is so efficient, is because we can then take 1, maybe 2 to drive a truck, and then we can send 3 or 4, and it just goes by that much faster, and we're not out that much more manpower. But then we can also continue to do other jobs. So at that time, another part of it was leaf dump, right? What we were allowing some leaf dumping over here, and it just wasn't, again, it was just abused, and everything that you can imagine was found in there. So it was found that down here at the park, there was a hillbilly will come out, right? There was a holler here, there was a ravine or a holler here. And so we went in and we cleaned all that up. We cleaned all the trash and debris and the brush, and we chipped all that out and cleaned it up and even widened it some. And so then we started filling that up. That has probably been, I'm going to say, 18 years. I think it was like that probably when Richard started, and he's been here 19. So it was right around in that period. It was never meant to be a permanent fix. It was a solution to what was over here. And don't get me wrong, it was better. But then over time, everybody started abusing that again, and our limb pickup wasn't sufficient to their timing. And so, they didn't want to wait, or we have contractors come in and they take trees down. They don't take care of them themselves. It's easier to go down here and throw it down here and unload it, hook a rope around it, unload it, and drive off than it is for them to chip it up. And so not only is it being abused, but honestly, it's full. You can see it there. So this site will continue to settle over time, and it'll compost just like what it's supposed to be, but it will continue to settle, only to a certain extent though. So what we're going to run into is, if we keep going at it, even if it wasn't being abused, we're going to get into an issue of trying to haul a bunch of that out just so that we can refill it. It's not the ideal situation. Some of the material in there is actually really good if it didn't have all the limbs in it. I mean, that's what a lot of these other communities I've visited, and I have went to their sites to see how they're doing it. And it's in a very controlled, fenced off environment where they can control it, and they man it. It may be manned 1 day a month, or it may be manned so many hours a day, but they man it. And they have said that is the only way that you will ever control it, is by manning it. So if you could, not saying that this is a bad idea, if we had somewhere where we could man it, we could turn it over and then we could sell it or give it away, whatever. But it is a good product, but this here is not real good because it's got limbs in it everywhere. And so you can't hardly do anything with it. And nobody wants to dig through that, because whenever they see you take a scoop out of that and you set it over, they're like, never mind. Right. So they don't want anything to do with it. So you can see, I mean, this is just a continual thing. We can go down there and clean it up, and say that we spend the better part of a week down there cleaning it up with 3 to 4 to 5 guys and equipment down there trying to pull this stuff out, because you just jerk your arms and shoulders and back out of place trying to get it out of that wadded up mess that it's in. By say we get done on a Thursday or Friday, by Monday or Tuesday, there's already 3 to 4 to 5 hours that goes right back into it. I know Chief Fannin has done a great job of trying to patrol these areas, but I mean, you can't be there all the time. And so I have physically, and I've called Doug down there too, I have physically been down there and seen them pull up there, and before I could get from one side of the park to the other, they've got it unloaded and driving off. I've made them load them back up. The police department has made them load them back up. If they all but refuse, then we will give them a citation for it, because there are signs that say that you can't do it. But it's just a continual issue. I mean, and I've told Natalie, I mean, we find TVs and car hoods, and right now you'll see here in just a minute, I mean, there's half of a tree laying there. There's a mattress. I mean, this is in our parks, right? And so that costs us money. And so I don't have any way to quantify how many people are using the service, but I can tell you that a much larger number are using the service. There's still contractors that go down there and dump. Contractors that are doing that for money, and then we're providing them a service to do something for free. So they're charging our citizens for something, and then they come down here and they get rid of whatever they're getting rid of for free, and then it turns around and costs us money. So not only is it costing the citizens money to get the service done for their house, but then it's costing the citizens money and their taxpayers by sending us down there to have to do it again. So it really does become an issue. The parks, I'll let Mark talk about this a little bit. They have some exciting stuff coming up in the parks, and they have some thoughts for the use of that property. And so with that, I'll kind of kick that over, not to take that away from you, Mark.
Sure. One of the things in the Parks Master Plan is a disc golf course. And the planning that went through on that actually connects Jackson Park to Nelson Park across the street and to North Park just up from there. And the plans are for an 18-hole disc golf course to go in these 3 parks. And this space up here on the crest of a hill, you know, one of the things about disc golf that's great right now, it's actually probably the fastest growing sport in the United States. And we just got our RFQs that came in for getting a disc golf course installed. But one of the things that we want with that, one of the neat opportunities is outside tourism, because people will travel 100 miles, 150 miles to play a great disc golf course, bringing tournaments into town. So we want a high quality, professional grade disc golf course for our citizens, but also to bring in that tourism from outside too, into our parks. One of the things that we have to do is use those great features and landscape features that we have in the park. This is on top of a hill. So this goes through a ravine and crests up on top of a hill. And for anyone who plays, golf, you know how great it is to tee off from an elevated tee box. I mean, that's what you want a lot of times, because same thing with disc golf. And this provides some great elevation changes, and to be able to use this as green space and possible space for holes on that disc golf course is just invaluable.
The paper that you've included here is from the Parks Master Plan, and this is the plan that I told you was the drawings that we were given were very, even before conceptual, right? Nothing's to scale. And they originally showed us an 18-hole course that connected all 3 parks. And you will see some of those holes on the other quadrant of LSO Jackson. While those are still viable options, the intent of the board, and Mark, please correct me if I'm out of line, but was to offer all of the parks and let them tell us how a disc golf course actually fit into those properties. And there was even some concern by park board members on the holes, the nets, what do you call those things? The things that stick up there at North Park. So there was some concern with whether or not that would change the theme of that particular park. And so some interest in shifting some of that golf course maybe into this other property. So that's kind of some of the plan. At this point, does staff have any other information they want to present?
I will tell you that I have looked at the properties that we own inside and outside the city. We own a sludge farm just outside the city limits. I don't have a recommendation or a plan of how we would address the service if we were to continue to use it. But I will tell you that it is becoming quite cumbersome for city staff to keep up with the abuse. And like I said, the site is full. When I say that, we're not looking at hauling all that out to make the land reusable. We're talking about cleaning it up, taking the old dead trees out and filling on top of it. So you have to have a little bit of room in order to get some fill on there, to get some dirt on there, and to get some grass or something growing on there so it doesn't erode.
Okay.
What do we do with all the chips now from the limb pickup service? I mean, where do we dump those at?
Sometimes people want those, but more often than not, we have an arrangement with the county that they allow us to do that, because they are much smaller and they do decompose, and they have an avenue that they can use those for something. They're not They're not typically good for anything. They're full of everything from thorns to poison ivy to whatever. And I will say we do use them in the park some, but they're not ideal.
But we use the county to get rid of that.
We do, and it's I look for that to come to an end. We had it's full. Their site is pretty full, but we used to take all of our fill to them, our excess fill if somebody didn't want it, and that's been cut off for several years now. So space is just becoming an issue for everybody.
So as we open up the floor, and feel free to ask additional questions as they may come up. I think what we are looking for today is your thoughts on the matter, and what it is you want to know from us, so that we can bring back additional information that might help you make a decision, or if you have a decision already made, if you would voice that. Again, we're trying to put out everything we know and then capture your thoughts and ideas so that we can start moving forward on this, whatever that may be. So, Alderman Quinn?
Do we have property that could be used for this that is controllable and possibly manned? Not all the time, but.
I mean, the only thing, and you got to be really careful, right? So I'm being fully transparent. The only one would possibly be the sludge farm, but you have to be so careful with that because that is regulated by DNR, and they pop in and they take visits, and that is where we spread our sludge, and it is a very sensitive issue. And so I would highly recommend not doing it there because we do spread our sludge on that. And so how would we allow people in there during that process? And I wouldn't want to try to reschedule that around that because you guys have all seen how much we have to haul. And when we get into that mode, that is the purpose for that property. And so outside of that, we don't. Now, I would absolutely love to buy a piece of property for storage, right? Not just have property. I've said it several times. City of Marshfield should not be in the habit of being in the real estate business. But I do think that it is in the city's best interest to own a piece of property that we can improve. It can be full of haulers and full of whatever that we can clean up and maintain. But I do think that we need to at some point, and if I've expended a lot of time trying to find this place, I haven't found it yet. Right. But if we can find it, and the challenge is I can find it 10 miles away, right, but our citizens are not going to drive 10 miles away to get to it because at that point they're in Stratford or they're halfway to right, Phillipsburg, Conway. So there's a real challenge there. So if you know somebody that would be interested in offloading a piece of property, we'd buy it, right? But
preferably if it's one big hole.
That's right, where we're looking for. So to answer your question, no, we don't.
Can't we mound up some of those limbs and burn them and kind of speed up that process of cleaning it up a little bit? Or I don't know.
So DNR has a so burn permits are not what they used to be. If you take the material on your site and burn it, if we were to go out and clear, like when we cleared all of that for the I-44, mm-hmm, it was stuff that was there.
Right.
There's a whole different stipulation. You cannot have a place unless there's an emergency situation like the ice storm. You can't just have a dump site for you to burn. You can't have it continue. We did during that for a while, and they gave us a lot of grace on that. And we burned over behind the county for months and months and months and months and months. But finally, and that permit was actually under the city's name. No more. So that's not really, right? I'm not going to say that they wouldn't on a temporary basis, but that would not be a permanent solution. Now, that being said, individuals within the city, they can get their own burn permit, right, and they can burn. They work with Rick. They work with Chief Taylor. They can get the permit from the girls as long as it's not a non-burn time, but they can burn that. And gotcha. but we can't invite them here to burn.
Okay, Alderman Lee.
I don't know what the solution is. I honestly don't.
I understand.
If you don't have space and a space that you can control, and you can't trust grown adults to not abuse the system, what options are left? sure you can take down the sign and say no more or whatever, and there's gonna be a car head and a mattress and a rolled carpet.
Trust me, it's not exciting
By
to
the
sit
4th
on
of
this
July.
side. Trust me, it's not exciting, and I'm not happy to be sitting here on this side of it, asking you guys to do away with the service that some people
No.
use.
But
However, I do think that if people, when people actually realize the amount of abuse that's going into it and the amount of time and effort and money that we're spending to maintain it, that might help an opportunity present itself of what we can do with it.
One topic that I don't think we covered was how we would control the back portion of that property if we were to discontinue the service.
Yeah. If you want to go on through, let me get another screen up here where I can.
I'll
share
bring
my
up something
screen.
real quick while we're doing that. Had we thought about, because it sounds like we've spent a lot of resources in handling that facility. Have we thought about putting that out to like Hamptons or the greenhouse down the street where they could take leaves for compost and potentially even some sort of pay just due to the fact of the service? I mean, would that alleviate our situation? They would man it themselves. It would still provide that service. I mean, have we kind of looked at that potential maybe?
I haven't. I'm not going to say that it's not worth the conversation, right? I think it'd be a challenge for them to take on that headache. And again, do we want to invite that appearance at a?
I don't know.
You know what I'm
I'm
saying?
just sitting here thinking about the fact that there may be somebody else that can provide that situation, or, the remedy to that without us having, the parks look like that, or,
Sure. I'm not opposed to having any conversation, and I can.
You want us to go on while you pull up the map?
Yeah.
Alderman Cunningham?
Well, I remember when they started this and they monitored it. I know several people that got in trouble dumping wrong stuff. But yes, it's gotten out of hand, but I use it every fall. We've got to have something somewhere to take the leaves. I mean, it's flat out. We have to have somewhere to take them, or you're going to get people start burning them and fires get out. You had a brother-in-law fire got out here a few years ago, burning leaves. And it's going to happen more. We're going to have another problem if we take away. But yes, it needs to be, that one needs to be probably shut down. But we need somewhere to do it. I have to drive, it's like Henry for me, but if I have to drive across town, I can do it. But we need to monitor. But I've been talking, I work with a guy from Nixon. And they've got a real good place down there. He said they have no problem. They monitor it. You back in there, you dump your stuff and they haul it up. I don't know if that's something we need to look into, but by fall, we need somewhere to take these leaves.
So that is what Sam has talked to about. He's reached out to other communities to find out.
And like
what
the
they do.
contractors do not need to be, it wasn't made for them. It wasn't designed for the contractors to do that. It was designed just for your citizens, and we need something.
Alderman Boggs?
I agree that we need something, just trying to figure out the best solution to keep providing the service at the most economical way without ending up with people dumping.
And like Stacy said, grown adults ought to know.
Oh, they do.
But I deal with that all the time.
Okay.
So what that would look like, there's a few different things, and we've talked about several over time, but obviously just by saying we're going to close it doesn't mean that it's closed. Just by saying that we're going to do this or that doesn't mean that everybody's going to obey. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. However, we would have to put some control devices in until we got it cleaned up and until we kind of set that precedent, until we got the grass seeded on, until we got things going the way that it's supposed to be, right? Until we set that precedence that it is no longer that dump. And so in that process, we would probably be looking at fencing, putting a gate here with a pedestrian opening for all the time for people to use as a walking trail, this back section. But putting a gate either somewhere in this area so that they can still have this turnaround. Obviously, this is two-way traffic. This is just one-way traffic. And then also putting in either putting in a gate here at Garsh Drive or here before it goes into the fairgrounds, one or the other. The interesting thing is if you were to limit these to pedestrian openings for normal use, by default, it creates another walking trail that is safe for people to walk on with no traffic from here, at least until you get over into here. And if we needed to put a pedestrian gate or whatever, there is a service road here behind these barns, but if we need to put a pedestrian gate so they get back in here, there's already a gate there for traffic. But it would allow us to gate this off to where people couldn't get through here, and we'd have to run a fence on up this way so they don't just drive around
I
it.
was gonna say, because a lot of people come off CC,
Yeah,
come
they
up
would.
down that fence line.
So-
I've seen it happen many times.
So we wouldn't really be interested in looking at putting in a permanent 8 foot tall,
Right.
what is there along the inside of Garsh. We might be looking at a 4 foot, or we might be looking at putting in some type of decorative, cheaper fence until we get through there. But we would have to control access from here
Oh, yeah.
to here.
They drive all over that hillside.
So what I have written down is that it seems that we have a consensus that this site is full.
Yep.
And something needs to be done with this particular site. However, the board wants to continue the service. And they want the continued service to be monitored, which will require the use of an employee we probably don't have right now. So we would need an employee. So we need to identify an employee, a site, right? And anything else that might run through DNR on establishing this type of a service at a new location. And it sounds to me like you want those things done before the site is closed, or you want this site closed regardless. At that, I'm not sure where the board's voice is falling.
Well, right now, everything they take down there is gonna be trash or limbs.
Right.
It's not grass clippings. So I will close it now, but we need to find something by fall for leaves and grass.
Okay.
That's why I look at it. I mean, and maybe we need to charge a little, if we found it.
Okay, so we do not have additional personnel in this budget, but we can look at that. In addition, our staff is telling us that we do not have another site. So I need to know, I cannot give a directive to staff that says, find me a piece of property by fall. I can't do that. It's not realistic.
Can we have a little bit more time to think about?
Absolutely. So why don't we maybe table this and bring it back, let's say the second meeting in June, give us about a month to kind of chew on it a little bit more and let staff take what we've given them tonight and work on it. And each of us kind of do the same, see what we can do by reaching out into the community to see if there's, you mentioned, is there somebody else that does want the service, right? And then let's bring it back in that second meeting in June and discuss some more. There is nothing that says a decision has to be made tonight. I'm just trying to get the most information to staff so that they can make an action plan and go do something for us. So does that sound appropriate?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
The good thing about making a decision on this site sooner than later is we have several construction projects going on to where we do have fields where we're not going to be handling it 2 and 3 times. So if we can get the site cleaned up, we can get it covered up in the same motion rather than having to go back and reload it and do this and do that. And we can kind of keep it cleaned up as we went. But regardless whether or not you close it down, we're going to have to start cleaning it up over the next month for sure to get prepared anyway. So Brandon's on here. So good luck with that, Brandon.
Yeah, so some of that work will start because we have to do it for the 4th of July celebration. That work was going to happen regardless of your decision now or later.
Yep.
That work's going to happen. So we will continue with that plan, that work's going to happen, and we'll meet back in 2 meetings and and reconvene on the topic and see if maybe we have a different outlook or maybe we have a different prospect. Okay, next item on the agenda is funds for road repair on paving projects. Sam?
Yeah, so actually got these. So as you guys know, you all had approved $50,000 that was budgeted in the operational budget to start get us started working on some road repairs and subgrade for Banning Street and Marshall. These funds, the funds that you approved were essentially what I just said, just to get us started. As you guys probably have seen, there's been several headaches about trying to get Banning Street, get it closed down and trying to keep traffic off of it so we can get the work done. And now we're fighting the weather, just like we expected to fight that. But I will tell you that the road has changed, right? If you guys have noticed that, there's been potholes pop up on roads that never have. I don't know if you've been down the new corridor lately. It's a brand new road, and it is definitely not in the shape that it was last fall. So that weather does change things. We've had some more areas that popped up and going to have to be a little bit more aggressive financially and physically to catch up to where we can meet this paving season. But on this sheet that I just showed you, you guys had approved the $50,000 that was in the original budget. And then what I'm asking you for is to approve an additional $50,000 tonight for us to keep going. Now, if you look in that first column down there towards the bottom, there at Banning, and when you look there at Banning and the resurface North Marshall, so those numbers had contingencies in them, and then they also had dollars in there for the subgrade repair. So basically what we're doing is taking some of that money out of those estimates and coming up with that 50, if that makes sense. So it would actually bring those dollar amounts down. Now, with the price of fuel, with the price of everything the way that it is, I really think that we'll be going out for bid for these projects probably within the next 2 weeks. And so we'll actually know exactly where we're at, and we'll know what we can afford, what we can't afford. But we're not locked into spending anything on that. And again, a big contingency in that is that $125,000 down there for that North Marshall box culvert. Again, that doesn't have to be done. That can always be replaced down the road. It's not bad right now, but those corrugated metal culverts, they do rust out, and that's a very big waterway when it is raining. And so the intent was just to do it all together. However, if that's the difference between getting some of these other roads paved and getting them done, that'd be the first thing off of my list, because we can always come back in and we can cut that on each side, and then we can just concrete over the top of it, and it'll be fine. It'll make sense, and it'll actually act as a spillway over the top of it if things ever happen to come over it. So my request tonight is for you guys to approve for us to spend up to another $50,000 for road repair moving forward.
Okay. We'll open the floor. Alderman Lee?
You say we need it, we need it. I'm good with it.
So I should have told you this, of the first 50 that you approved, we're sitting somewhere between 35 and 40,000 right now. That's what we spent.
Okay. Alderman Cunningham?
I think we need to keep going.
Alderman Boggs?
I'm good with it.
Alderman Quinn?
And the only thing that it affects is maybe possibly the box culvert project.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be really careful, right? Because I mean, inflation has just went
Right.
out of this world. So I still feel confident that we'll be able to get all these projects done that I pitched during budget time. However, my goodness, the price for everything has just gone through the roof. Yes, theoretically, yes, I would agree with that statement. Yes.
Just don't make it out of wood.
Where are we out on Banning Street?
Where we at?
Um,
Worked on the last couple weeks.
So the weather, so one reason you guys, that's a good question. So one reason why you haven't seen us out there working is because we rented equipment for that. And so with the possible rain every day, you open that up and it turns to just mush underneath of it. And so we had the option, we called the people that we were renting the equipment from and asked them if they'd put a freeze on it. They said, nope. I said, okay, come and get it. There was no reason to pay $3,500 a month for something that's just going to sit there and let's look at. So they came and got it whenever the weather, when we see that we have a window, we'll either take one of our small piece of equipment that we have and fix some smaller holes. So you will see some progress out there, or whenever we get a good window in the weather, we will get that equipment back in here and we'll be ready to fire back up.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion to approve another 50,000 for Banning Street.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
All right.
Thank you very much. Rate study, RFQ evaluation results and firm recommendation. Sam?
So thank you very much to the participants for this, for the rate study interviews. We went through an RFQ process, basically a request for qualifications. We had 3 firms that submitted applications for this and information for this. There were Great Rivers Engineering, Raftless, and Toth and Associates. Our mayor, Alderman McNish and Alderman Lee and Alderman Boggs sit in as the water and sewer commissioners for the interviews, along with our utility superintendent and our city clerk, and with our finance director and myself. I will tell you that the top 2, the scores reflected. It was very close. We had very good interviews, had very good turnout. But in the end, Great Rivers came out on top with a score of 815 out of 910 points possible. Staff is recommending that you approve the high score. And from there, tonight, you're not committing to anything other than that will authorize us to start into the negotiation process with them to be able to bring you guys back a scope of services and a price for that rate study.
We'll open the floor for any questions, comments, or others. Alderman Cunningham.
I'm good.
Boggs?
Good.
Quinn?
Good.
Lee?
I'm good.
All right, I'll take a motion.
Move to approve. Great Rivers.
1 second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Used dump truck purchase from Greene County.
All right, I'm gonna try to get through this as clear and concise as what I can, but I will tell you it will get a little cumbersome here a little bit. So Greene County reached out and informed us that they had some used dump trucks that they were going to surplus. Sent us some pictures that looked really good from the pictures. We went up there. Richard and Brandon and I went up there. We have to have the bids in by late next week. It was a little heartbreaking, a little bit, I would say, when we got there. The trucks aren't in dire need of everything, but they are concerning a little bit. But obviously, they cycle their trucks in and out every 10 years, and they use it for the same thing that we do, right? And so that does take a big toll on equipment. I will tell you that I'll show you some pictures here in just a minute. I'll tell you that they use a product that they use calcium. They use liquid calcium on their roads, which it is more aggressive on the roads. And that's why a lot of times you'll see Greene County and Springfield and MoDOT maybe getting their snow and ice off a little bit more, not only the traffic, but they throw this other product on there. But I'll tell you, we used to use it and it ate you can almost watch it eat your metal. And it is just very corrosive. And it just, in the end, it just wasn't worth it. If we can get people to a main route, that's our purpose, right? And so we went away from using that just because of the cost and the wear and tear. So we went and looked at these trucks. And so I kind of put a few notes here for you to consider. As you know, we've been looking at trucks. We bought an international dump truck back in 2007. And ever since then, I have asked for a dump truck in every budget since then. And I've even added another one now because we are starting to get behind. When you look at that 2007 model, we call that our new dump truck. Beyond that, our next newest one is a 94, then a 93, then a 86, then a 78. So there's a big spread there that we just don't use, that we can't use because we can't hardly keep them on the road. We have had times where all 3 of them have been in the shop. Luckily, they have not been. When I say all 3, one of them basically stays at the cemetery. One of them basically stays at the treatment plant. We don't run those over the road very much. We do if we get in the pickle, then we'll bring them up on a big job if we're hauling short term. But we have had our 3 good trucks in the shop at the same time. It hasn't been uncommon over the last couple of years to have them in the shop with a full load still on them. The interesting thing is whenever you have a full load of asphalt on them, because you only have a certain amount of time before that cools down before you have to do something with it. So we have had that come up. So it has been an issue, but you could still have that with a brand new truck. It's just not near as likely. So some positive facts for both, right? For used and for new. Obviously, with a new truck, you're going to have a warranty. You're going to know what you're getting. We're going to be able to set that thing exactly how we want. There's different options, and it's not like an option like when you're going to buy a pickup. Oh, these are cool factors. These are functional options that we would use every day that we're using them. They'd have a longer lifespan than if we bought something used for us, and there should be little to no cost in the first 5 years of operation, right? Especially with how we run them. That 07 model that I'm talking about that we have, Brandon Richard could get closer, but I think that it's probably got 70,000 miles on it, something like that. So I mean, we don't put the miles on because we are here in town. With the used one, right? You're gonna have that lower immediate financial impact. You're gonna have instant availability. Basically, if we buy these, we go get them and we start fixing them up. We get them back in, we get them into our fleet. Would be hopefully, right, be better than our current equipment with more options on it as far as how we would handle inclement weather. And it would possibly not hinder the ability to purchase other needed equipment, meaning we wouldn't spend as much capital on that. So maybe we could get some of these attachments or replace a backhoe or pickups or whatever else we might have that could come up. Now, the negative things, new truck, we talked to state bid, to the guys that control state bid, and they're 10 to 12 months out right now. They said maybe with a single axle truck that we might be able to have one in by the end of the year. However, it would need to be ordered within the next very short window. With that being said, I'll get to another slide here in a minute. They will not give us a price on one because they change all the time. But the negative impacts of a new one, obviously, is, we're looking at $160,000 to $170,000 split 3 ways across 3 different departments. That's a pretty big chunk. If you do the 2 trucks that I feel like we need, that's an even bigger chunk. So there's definitely a negative there. And then obviously, this is not the only piece of equipment that these guys need to do their job and do it efficiently. And so it probably would hinder us being able to buy more equipment. With an old truck or with a used truck, there's going to be no warranty. There's no way for us to know. It's just everybody's bought a used vehicle. We could literally pay for it and drive it off the parking lot up there, and it could motor could go out of it, right? So no guarantee. We would have to invest some money into them up front. I'll get into that here in just a minute, but we would purchase these trucks, and we would have to invest a certain amount of dollars into it before we would turn them into our fleet. And then we'll most likely incur more frequent breakdowns and maintenance costs. So as I said, these are from Greene County. They're not bad looking trucks from here in the pictures. I will tell you, Gov Deals is a government website that they throw things out there that they're selling. I visit this site frequently looking for this and looking for plug here. I'm looking for a car for administrative uses here for the girls in City Hall or the people here in City Hall so that they don't have to use their personal cars. But I'm on there all the time, and Purple Wave is another auction site that a lot of people use and a lot of communities use to sell their equipment. And so when I saw these pop up, these actually came from an email from Greene County to myself, and I passed them along to Natalie and to Brandon and to Richard. But from the pictures, they look really good, right? And I was really excited because this is a very similar. Ours is an 07. These are 010s, or these are 2010s and 2008s. And so I got really excited. So we tried to run up there and look at them. This is what you get with liquid calcium, and this is what you get with salt, right? These trucks have absolutely been used, and they were bought for a purpose, and that's what they used it for. Now, what we're talking about here, this is a single wheel. They actually have 4 trucks up there, 2 short wheelbase single axle trucks, and then they have 2 dual tandem axle trucks. So there's one of each that we wouldn't even be interested in probably taking if they gave it to us, or it'd be a very, very small fee. So we're really not interested in submitting a bid on those. This is the exhaust pipe, basically coming out from the muffler, out from underneath the truck, out from underneath the cab, and then it turns straight up and it goes up beside the cab. So you can see you can see the rust hole there inside of that. So that would all have to be replaced before we put it into our fleet. I took this picture because I want to show you. So obviously there's some surface rust up here on the front of that frame and on the front of that bumper. Not a huge concern. I took this picture because when we talk about dump trucks for your municipality, this question's come up in the past. Why don't you just go buy? I know all sorts of people that bought a dump truck and it didn't cost $175,000. You're right. But when we talk about spreading these across multiple departments, this right here is what sets them apart. This right here is what sets MoDOT and Greene County and Marshfield and everybody apart from a private contractor. This is a separate pump that sits on front of your motor that allows you to operate all of your controls for your spreading salt and for your spreader, and then also your plows. Our old ones, they run off of the transmission pump. Makes it very difficult. Natalie can testify to that. I took her for a ride, and it makes it very difficult to shift. It makes it very difficult to turn your pumps on and off inside. And it's just not ideal, right? It was fine when I started 20 years ago. It was fine. That's kind of the standard, but it is definitely not. A lot of times for us to be, for me to be comfortable, we do send a couple of guys when we're using the older spreaders because of that, right? And so we'll have somebody driving and then somebody riding shotgun. So in a normal stance with that newer truck that we have, it's a one-man operation. It's not uncommon for Brandon or Richard or used to myself just to be in here by themselves, and you can cover a large amount of ground just by yourself with that truck. I don't know, there's no math behind it, but I would think that these guys would probably testify that you could probably cover twice as much ground with the one truck as what you could with both the other ones. And Natalie could probably testify to that as well. I only took one picture of the tandem. It really doesn't have the rust issues that the other one does. It has the one that we're considering. It has a small oil leak. I really think it's going to be around that oil pan. It needs new tires all the way around it. The small one that we just looked at, it had tires all the way around it. But this one here would need new tires all the way around it. Okay, so a cost valuation. So I haven't priced a tandem axle dump truck for the city because it's on it is a need, and you won't see it really on a growth area because it's out there, right? It would be, man, this would be great for all these projects that we have going on, because we're basically, those small trucks will haul about 8 ton. These here will haul roughly 14. Now, you know, there's some variance in there. It may be 8 to 10 and 14 to 16, but it's not quite double, but it's close. And so that really makes a big difference when you're trying to move dirt like that. The price that we got we priced it back during the budget, and then right after the first year, we got the state bid. It was $162,505 for a new single wheel, single axle, single cab dump truck. We had originally looked at adding a crew cab, because what we get into with the inmate crew when we are chipping, obviously there's not room for 3 or 4 guys in a regular cab dump truck. And so we send somebody to chip, and then we send somebody driving the van or a truck behind them. And so now we're tying up 2 employees, to where if we had a crew cab, then you're talking about 1 employee and 3 or 4 inmates riding in that same truck. So you're not burning 1 person just to drive around with them. But as I stated earlier, we reached out to them this week, and they wouldn't guarantee that we could get one in 2021, and they wouldn't guarantee us a price. So we know that it'd be above and beyond the $162,505. Another caveat to that, though, that $162,505 does include a snowplow, and it does include a brand new spreader bed for it. So it's a little bit more than just a truck. Okay, now we'll get into the used trucks. So I asked him, I said, I don't want to insult you with an offer. So what do you feel like is an appropriate price for the truck if nobody else bids on them, or, you know, if we happen to be the only ones interested in it? They threw out on the small ones, 12,000 or around that figure, and then up to 15,000 and beyond on the larger trucks. But they also said, hey, you know, feel free to make whatever offer you want to, and we'll consider it. So I really think that small truck that I showed you a picture of, I really think that it could be bought for $10,000. But Then we'll need to put a new bed on it, as you saw. There's roughly $20,000 and then another $3,000, give or take, for that exhaust. So I'll pause there for just a second because you've got, so basically what we're saying is $33,000 for that truck to get it up into operation for that single axle. The concern I have in that is that if that's what we see, and keep in mind, these two crawled all over these trucks and they drove them, but if that's what we can see off the cuff, that's a lot of corrosion. It's a lot of damage. I don't know what we're not seeing. I know our our 07 is in way better shape than that one. And I know what problems we have with it with corrosion. So I'll pause there for a little bit of risk on that, right? Because we're going to turn around and use it for the same thing, just minus the liquid calcium. Here's where I'm going to try to make this clear. So we're sitting at 33,000 for that truck. I think I went down one. So I think that we could probably, it's raining in it. I think that we could probably make one of the spreader beds work that we have. I think we'd have to modify it, which is not that uncommon. We've had to do that in the past. I think we can make one work out of these old trucks. But it's still got the old controls in it, the similar ones to the ones I was talking to you guys about that you have to manually flip. Our 07 has electronic controls on there, which Natalie can, I'd be happy to bring it up here anytime to show you guys what the difference was. If those controls work, right? Those things get worn, they've got a valve in there, they get worn. That's saying that they even work. So I really think if we're going to use the truck, if we were just using it for hauling, I'd say, hey, listen, let's just buy the truck and make the improvements, and let's have $33,000 invested in the truck. For what we need it for, though, for another $20,000, we would put new controls in it, and we would buy a new plow. So total investment, what we're looking at on that small truck, somewhere between 53 and 58,000. I'm a little reserved on that one. I'm not 100% sure on that purchase. Now we move on to the tandem axle truck. So I think this one here could probably be bought for that $13,000 mark. And on both of these, when I say that, if the board approves me to submit a price, they will probably, if it's not good enough and nobody bids on it, I think that they'll come back to us and say, listen, that's not going to take it, but we'll work with you on this. But also, if we get it, man, awesome, right? We got to get it. If we get it, we're going to get it where it's good for us. If we get it, great. If we don't get it, I don't know that it's a big heartbreak. So if we were to move on this one, I would probably be looking at offering something around 13,000. Just to get it up to par for what we need. Like I said, it does have an oil leak on it, and it does need new tires all the way around it. $3,500, $4,000 for tires on it. And then the same thing over again, right? On this one, with it being a bigger one, we won't have a bed that fits it. The plow would be universal. We'd still be looking at buying a plow. But the bed, I don't know that I would recommend buying a bed right now. That'd be something that I'd probably want to come back to you guys midsummer and talk about. Just because that bigger truck, we're not going to get it down Mill Street. We're not going to get it down South Buffalo. We're not going to get it down some of these side streets, but we'd absolutely use it on Banning, on Marshall, on Washington, on Elm, on golf course. So it's not that we wouldn't use it, but it wouldn't have the same versatility or the same flexibility that the smaller trucks would. So on this one here, I would what I would probably recommend doing on this one is probably offering $13,000 for the truck, but then also going ahead and investing that $6,000 into it to get it ready for us to use and to haul. What I don't want to do in this is I don't want to keep coming back to you all for this and for that and for this and for that. So if you guys were to approve, and I'll get to a recommendation here in a minute, but if you guys are to approve a recommendation, it will be for the purchase of the truck and whatever attachments or improvements we're going to do to it. That way, it's not just an ongoing battle to come back and get it up and going. So that's kind of it. I want to pause there because I threw a whole lot of information at you. I know this is a really short window, but we really tried to jump on this as quick as what we could to get this in front of you. Do you guys have any questions?
What's the inside of the beds look like? I've seen the rust on the outside, but what's,
They're not terrible. They're not terrible. They could probably be used. So the big truck wouldn't need a bed, right? All it needs is tires and to fix that oil leak. The exhaust wasn't in near the shape the other one was, and it didn't seem like it had been used quite in the same fashion that the other one had because the rust wasn't near as bad.
The little one looked like it had a liner. They had lined one of them little ones.
Yeah. I just kind of want to pause there for questions before I move on to some kind of recommendation, because there's a lot to consider on this for sure.
What would it do for us if we did a little of both? If we bought one new one and one of these, what?
I'm
We
glad-
bought a new small,
A new small and
So I'm
a
glad-
used
used.
big.
So I'm glad you asked, because that is it's going to sound like we've actually rehearsed that. I haven't talked to Stacy about this, by the way, but that would be my recommendation. My recommendation would be let the small one go. I mean, if we wanted to make an offer, if we wanted to make an offer of $5,000 on it, nobody else may bid on it. We might get it. I don't know. At that point, we could dump a little bit of money into it and probably be okay. But my recommendation would be to make an offer of 13 to 15,000 on this one, right? That would give me a little bit of room to negotiate with them if they come back, since we're not going to meet for a little while. Maybe even up to like a $17,000 mark, just to have a little bit of room there if there is something. But then to go ahead and do the repairs on this one, and then let us get it at that price. I don't think we're going to get hurt. I think that at that we could turn around and surplus it, and I think we'd be all right. But let us get it here. If that buys it, let us get it here. Let us use it for these projects. Let us get it here and use it for banning and all this hauling that we're having to do 2 or 3 times. Let's use it. And then by this summer, we'll know what kind of truck it is. We'll know whether it's worth investing the other $20,000 for a spreader. I haven't got a price on it yet. Like I said, I'm pretty comfortable saying that 10,000 would buy one on the small trucks, but on a big truck, I don't know. It's going to be more. But then at that point, we come back to you all and say, hey, listen, this truck is just, man, what a great deal. We really ought to look at improving the electronics on it and the spreading equipment on it. And we really ought to put a spreader in it, and we want to buy a snowplow for it. The reality may be that may not be the case. And we may be coming back to you all and asking you, we have a couple of trucks that we can put, a couple of pickups, 1-ton pickups that we can put a plow on. That might be another viable option, right? That we may come back with. And yes, let us look into buying a new truck. The new one, though, I will tell you, it'd be really hard pressed even right now to get it in 2021. So right now, you probably need to bank on that being a 2022 thing.
I think you're going to see a huge increase in the price also, because even on the 3/4 ton trucks, they're expecting up to like a $30,000 increase just on the base model truck because they're having problems with getting the components to even finish them. I think several of the dealerships lines are shut down because of that.
We were talking about taking one out of the fleet, right? And either surplusing it or doing something different with it. Even if we got a new one. We're not talking about doing that now. We would just keep it, and it would just probably get used a little bit less. But with the price of everything, we're just going to have to keep piecemealing them together until we just can't anymore.
With the price, let's say they said up to $20,000 for purchase and improvements. Do you plan to allocate that across funds?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So it was split 3 ways, right? It's split equally again across the water, the sewer, and the street. And so we would keep the same mentality moving forward.
And if we did allocate money to make a small bid, even on the single axle of 5,000 or something, even if we got that and it was a mess, I mean, aren't there potentially parts do any of those parts interchange with our stuff?
Probably not, but
No.
you probably get your money back out on surplus probably. I mean, you probably get your money back out on gov deals or something, because these haven't hit gov deals or Purple Wave yet. They gave us first option.
Okay.
They gave local communities the same option, the first option. And so even if we paid the 10 for it, that I think would buy it, I think you get your money back out of that. I mean, it's like I said, it's got $4,000 of rubber on it.
Yeah.
So I think that you're okay.
Okay.
The problem is that the unknown, right? The unknown. And so we're buying these to try to prolong or trying to replace equipment. But, you know, these are 13, 14, 15 years old, depending on when the truck was built and the chassis was built. And you see the wear and tear on that. And so it's not going to get any better, because the other thing it eats up the electronics on the back.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing.
I'm just concerned that if the price increase is well over,
Yeah.
so it would buy us a little extra time to kind of wait out some of that to get fixed, potentially. And if we did buy it, and we would have time to try it out and see if this thing's, we need to unload this
Sure.
thing. Or, hey, it's not as bad as we thought. Maybe it is worth putting a few bucks in.
If we bought the little one, I would want the authorization to put a new bed on it. But I don't know that we would do that up front. We would probably take it to a job and put it through the mills and see if it worked. The one thing I do know that we have to do is change exhaust. So I honestly, I'm not opposed to even offering the 10 for that truck, because I don't think that's putting us in a position to where we're going to get hurt. However, I would want the authorization, or I would want to know. I don't know how long that bed will hold together. The reason I say that is because the inside of the beds aren't that bad, but the way that those bedsides run.
Hey, too, on the inside of the bed deal, if you did get it and you wanted to replace a bed, we could always cut that liner out and save it and put it back in there down the road. And it'll work in one of our other trucks even.
So this, so these sides are, they're just channels. And then, so what you see, where you see through there, that's not the backside of the bed. It actually, so our old trucks, it would be. These here actually have almost a U shape to it, and they really take a big sweep. And so a lot of times right up there in that crevice, right, that's where it's going to be. And so I don't have a whole lot of faith in the bed. And so if we were going to buy them, I would want to know that we had authority to go ahead and change the bed out if it's a good truck.
After we kind of knew that we liked it, thought
Yep.
it was going to be worth keeping.
Yep. And I've done a lot of talking. Brandon's the one that uses them in and out every day, and Brandon's still in them all the time. And he's going to be responsible for keeping them on the road. It's going to impact his and Richard's budget along with street plan. I mean, I really don't want to be the only one speaking to this. So I really want the board to hear from you guys on this as well. Cricket.
I'm waiting on Brandon.
Oh, I'm here.
What is your opinion, Brandon? I mean, it's just an opinion, right? What is your opinion?
I mean, it wouldn't be a bad truck to just put through the work to see how good of a truck it is. I wouldn't go, I don't know if I'd put a bet on it immediately, until it's a good truck, but any little bit we can get to help us, I mean, it'd be a big help. Because like you said, who knows when we would be able to get a new truck, because Daryl, like you said, it might be a year from now if we ordered it tomorrow before we got a new truck.
I just don't want let's say that we submitted both bids and we got both of them. I just don't want the perception to be, oh, you got trucks. Now you don't need another truck. The new one, man, I tell you, if we had all those things go down at once, it's a deal. I mean, I really don't know how we'd get the roads cleaned.
But that would give us a surplus to sell in the future to kind of get back. I mean, this would just, if I'm thinking correctly, it would kind of give us a little bit of time, a little bit of maybe insurance if they're good trucks, which is unknown. It's like anything until you get it, you kind of put it through the paces. But it might give us a little bit of time until we could get a truck order, know we're getting it, then we could surplus this back out. Or surplus whatever we decided was best to get rid of.
I mean, the reality is we've got $150,000 allotted in the growth area for a dump truck.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I mean, even if we spent,
And 150, like we have them both.
right. So even if we spent a portion of that, even if we couldn't get a truck until next year, we'd be reallocating money for that in next year's budget. So
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the big truck is a big perk with all these projects. I mean, it would save us tremendous amount of time. And like you say, the little one, it's honestly, it's probably worth putting a bid in, even if it's not the full amount. I mean, put a bid in on it and like you say, try it out and know that you're probably gonna have to replace a bed. And like I said, we could cut that liner out if it is good enough and save it, you know, if we make it that far. And if not, then you just sell it again, because at the cost of these new trucks and the hardship to get them, you know good and well that as soon as those hit gov deals, if you don't bite on them, they'll be gone. And as hard as you guys have looked, I mean, it'll be a while before we get the chance again.
I think with all that being said, and the way that I feel the temperatures in the room, I think that it would be reasonable for me to ask you all to approve up to either a dollar amount. So either up to $25,000 to spend on these two trucks, or up to 10 on one and up to 15 on the other. And that gives me some room. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be my offer, but that gives me some room and authority. Anything beyond that, I don't know that I feel comfortable spending any more than that on that. So I don't know that it does me any good for you guys to approve any more than $25,000. I would almost leave it at that. And obviously I'll talk to them, and they're not out to, and they were so nice to talk to us and work with us. Obviously, I'm pretty sure that they'll share with me whether or not they have any other bids, and that will affect what I offer for it. So I would feel comfortable, if you guys would feel comfortable, I'd feel comfortable if you'd authorize, expenditure up to $25,000 on these trucks.
Okay, I feel like we've had fairly good discussion. So are we okay to go straight to motion? All right.
I'd make a motion to authorize up to 25,000 for the purchase of these two trucks.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you
Is there-
very much.
More on this topic?
No, like I said, we have looked high and low, and these definitely aren't perfect, but I mean, the price tag reflects that too. So.
Have you explored repair versus replace on that?
So we on the 94 model, that we have, we did. Brandon's really good friends with a fabricating company just down the road, and they're actually working on a truck for us right now, the cemetery truck, and we looked at that and we explored that. No way. There's just too much cancer to it, and so in the end, it was just going to be a Band-Aid. Could never get it sealed back up, and with the corrosive stuff that we're putting in it, that's where it's gonna fail, is right there at that patch job. So we actually, that truck that we put that on, I bet that truck, if you were trying to sell it on Gov Deals or something, it might bring $6,000, $7,000. We put a $11,000 bet on it. It's cheaper than a $170,000 truck.
Right.
All right. Our next agenda item is future agenda items. I wanted to give
Thank you,
you
guys.
a little update on what is coming in our future. The item that I have left over from this meeting that will come back is to discuss the leaf dump and compost site at the second meeting in June. But other things that are coming up in June are, we're going to have a presentation with Monica on some federal funding that has come available for the city. What we know about it as of that time, which we've been waiting with bated breath to get anything from them. We got a small pamphlet, really, for the size of stuff they put out. It was small, but we got the information that they had available right now, which still leaves us with a ton of questions. So hopefully we'll have more clear answers for you then, but we'll discuss that at the first meeting in June. We will have the space needs analysis coming back from BKD, not the accounting firm, Buxton, Kulik and Dodd. That will re-energize or provide us with additional information that we need to further discuss the City Hall project. Regardless of what City Hall that is, the City Hall project being a topic, so that will bring that back up. We have talked in the past about the transportation plan needing updated. It is out of date for all state purposes. So we've already been in conversation with SimCog on what we need to do to reassess and update the plan that we already have. And also what other means or modes of transportation do we need to look at to broaden the current plan? You'll probably be hearing about that in June. And I've had this sitting on the back burner for a while, so we're going to get it off of here. We need to discuss economic development policies. It's something that we do not currently have. We have financial advisors who have helped other cities build these policies. What they do is they basically take the temperature and the concurrence of what the board is willing to discuss on certain types of processes, and they lay it out in a policy so that while we are not here and readily available, our staff are able to have those conversations with some degree of confidence as to what the board may or may not like to see in our community as far as economic development, incentives and taxing arrangements, etc. So those are things that are already coming in June. So June already sounds full, but with that, any other future agenda items? Okay, hearing none, we have a closed item tonight pursuant to section 61021 subsection 2. This is leasing, purchase, and real estate, and I need a motion and second.
Motion to go into closed session.
Roll call vote, please.
Quinn.
Aye.
Boggs.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Cunningham.
Aye.
All right, we are in closed and we'll wait just a minute